So how strong is Arcanist? This class is actually insanely tanky and has very good sustain. The only thing that this class lacks at the moment is damage, but our build makes up for that. Don't believe me? Roll the clips. Alright, let's jump into our first skill here. It's going to be Runic Sunder. Now, what exactly does the skill do? Well, it deals a bit of damage, but that's not the main reason you run it. You run it for the Rune Steel. It steals 2200 armor and applies minor mayhem for 15 seconds, reducing their damage done by 5%. How does the steel armor work? Well, when you steal 2200 armor from your opponent, you're not only taking 2200 physical and spell resistance away, but you're applying that to your own physical and spell resistances as well. And then another bonus to this ability is whenever it's slotted, you get 2% damage reduction per active crux. This stacks up to about 6% when you have all your crux up, which is about 10% overall damage reduction the skill gives you, and gives you a lot of extra survivability. For one of our main damaging abilities, we're running Blood Craze here. We're running this because it gives us a nice hot and it heals us for a bit of health, which is always nice to have. And then Rune of the Colorless Pool is a super strong stun. Now, why is it a very strong stun, you may ask? Because not only does it give us minor brittle for 20 seconds and minor vulnerability, which increases their damage taken by 5% and their crit damage taken by 10%, this stun activates after 1 second, fearing them in place. This is super strong because it doesn't waste a global cooldown, so you can combo this immediately afterwards with our other main spammable, Rune Blade here. It deals 2500 magic damage 3 times in generating a crux. This is a very good ability for generating cruxes, which basically means we'll always have our 3 cruxes on our front bar. Another thing that this ability does is it gains 1100 weapon and spell critical up to 2200. Depending on the amount of cruxes you have active, and it deals 3% per crux active as well. Since you'll always have 3 cruxes up on your front bar, this does 9% extra damage and basically gives you 10% crit for this ability alone. This does not affect your other abilities, just this one. For our major and minor brutality, we're running the class buff here. What this does is every 5 seconds you deal damage, you strike the enemy with a 4k magic damage, restoring 600 magicka and 600 stamina, and generate a crux if you have none. This is super good because this gives us an amazing amount of sustain and damage. You can run the other morph. The other morph gives you more damage overall, but this one just gives you too much sustain in my opinion to pass up, and that's why I chose to run it. I think getting 1200 resources every 5 seconds is just too good. The ultimate that this class gets is very strong as well. It does 4000 magic damage every 0.5 seconds within 3 meters. This leads to some nasty burst combos, and it pairs really well in my opinion with a colorless pool. Easy to combo with. You can run Dawnbreaker, it works well too. I just think that this dot is just too good to pass off in my opinion. It is a relatively expensive ultimate, so if you want a cheaper ultimate, Dawnbreaker would be a good option for you. Onto our back bar here. Rune Ward is the best ability in the game in my opinion. It just does too much, and I think personally it needs a nerf. Why is it so good, you may ask? Well, because you get a 20,000 damage shield for 1 second, and then another 12k damage shield for 5 seconds if the first shield persists. So if they do not break your first shield, you get a second 10k shield, which is super good. On top of that, the first time you take damage, the shield retaliates, dealing 2400 magic damage. The attacker scaling off your armor. That's nice, but it's not the most useful. But a big one about this ability is that you consume a crux to heal yourself for 3500 health, scaling off your max health per crux spent. So this heals you for about 10,000 health. You get a 20k damage shield and then another 10k damage shield afterwards. So in total, this ability is about doing 40,000 in terms of the damage shielding and the heals. And on our build, we have no way to spend our cruxes, so we will always have our 3 cruxes up for this ability to give us that juicy 10k heal. And then for our mobility skill, the fleet-footed gait, it's pretty fun to use in my opinion, but in no means it's better than the rat skill, Race Against Time. I definitely recommend Race Against Time over this skill. I just like this skill because it's more fun to use. Personally, it's still decent or good, gets a nice mobility. The only problem is it has a cooldown. It doesn't make it very attractive in terms of if you're really sweating in PvP. Race against time is just better. But for a class mobility skill, I do like using it. It's also relatively expensive. Vigor, another really good hot, gives us minor resolve. Nothing else to be said there. Elemental here just gives us major breach. And every 7.5 seconds, the enemy is afflicted the status effect Burning, Chilled, and Concussive, which is very good. The armor passive that this class gets is also super strong in my opinion, since not only does it give us major resolve, but whenever you take damage, you apply minor breach, reducing the armor of your attackers for 3k for 6 seconds, also generating you a crux up to once every 5 seconds. So this is, in my opinion, one of the best armoring abilities in the game because it gives you minor breach for free, which is about 5-6% more damage overall in your build. So it's super good to have, and I really like this armor ability. We are also only running 2 heals, if you did not notice, Resolving Vigor and Rune Ward, but don't worry, you have tons and tons of survivability because Rune Ward is just busted, and I think it needs a nerf in my opinion, but we will see what the devs end up doing. For our ultimate here, I'm running Sanctum of the Abyssal Sea. We run this for two reasons. One, because it's an amazing defensive ult that doubles as an offensive ult. So you can take up to a max of 80% damage here. What it does is the tentacles from the shield that absorb 60% of all damage for 10 seconds, up to a maximum of 80k damage, scaling off your max health. And when the shield collapses, you lash out, dealing all the damage you've absorbed as magic damage to the enemies within 5 meters over 10 seconds. So this actually hits very hard. If you get all the way up to 80k, then explodes, it'll do about 20k in PvP because you have to half the shield and you have to half the damage. So it's very good, and it's over 10 seconds, so it's a pretty nice dot you get. Apply some really good pressure to your opponents. Now keep in mind that this only shields you for 60% of the damage, so this will not shield you for the other 40, so you do have to keep that up through Rune Ward and Vigor, but with those up, you should not be dying whatsoever. Onto our stats here, I put 54 points into Magicka so we can get 25k max Magicka, and then 10 points into House so we can get that crisp, juicy 30k maximum HP, and then 17.5k max stamina. Nothing to say there. Our mag recovery is 2100, with our stamina recovery being 1700. We have very good sustain on this build. I virtually never run out of resources in CP in Battlegrounds. I tend to run out sometimes if I mismanage my resources and I play poorly. Our weapon and spell damage is 4300, 20% weapon crit with 5600 penetration, 14k physical and spell resist, fully buffed up. That does go up to 27k, so just keep that in mind. Our resistances are still really high, even though their base stats are very low. Critical resistance 1700. For the Mundus, I chose to run the Shadow because we are running kind of a crit build here. Khajiit I think is an amazing race. I chose to run Khajiit because 10% crit passive that you do get is just too good in my opinion to pass up. To 12%, just too juicy, and I love it too much. If you don't want to run Khajiit, Breton could work for more sustain if you want more survivability, or you can also run High Health. For our food here, Smoke Bear Haunch. If you're cheap or poor, you can go Jewels of Mithril, the exact same food as Smoke Bear Haunch, just a lot cheaper and more affordable. And then Vampire Sage 3. Vampire Sage 3 is a must for every PvP build, and I just don't really see a way to get around it. The damage reduction you get from it is just too good. You get 30% damage reduction when you're at 1% HP. This passive right here is just too good to pass up. For our pots, you are wondering, we are running crit pots to get the major prophecy bonus here. You do not need tripods, just a sustain is just fine, so you don't have to worry about that. Our stats fully buffed up is 5100 weapon damage, 34% crit with 27k spell resistance and 26k physical resistance, 1700 crit resist with 2400 magic recovery and 1600 stamina recovery. Anyways, onto our sets here. Now the way we do damage is all proc sets. Lovely. Zons will be our proc set here. Gives us a nice bit of damage, dealing 700 flame damage every 1 second, increasing by 100% per tick. This set right here, this gives you enough sustain and no CP that you never have to worry about sustain, so I definitely recommend running this set here. Then we're running Way of the Fire. Way of the Fire is super strong, gives us a lot of extra pressure, and it procs very easily off Blood Cray, so it's basically 100% uptime, and dealing an extra 3000 flame damage is super good. Then we're running 2-piece trainee, both light on our hands and waist here. I ran 2 light because I wanted more penetration and more mag recovery from the light piece bonus, so that's why I chose to run that. And then for our boots here, we're running heavy. Our legs are also heavy. Our chest is heavy. Our helmet and shoulder here are both medium, by the way. Our rings are all infused. For our mythic here, we are running Sea Serpent Coil. I chose to run this because I just love the stat density of this mythic. Major Berserk and Major Courage is just too good, in my opinion, not to run. If you want more mobility, you can run Markin. It is good, but I just prefer Sea Serpent Coil over Markin. We are running 1 recovery glyph, by the way. You do not need this. You can definitely run weapon and spell damage. I never run out of sustain with a weapon and spell damage, but I like the extra mag recovery because it just gives me more flexibility to make a mistake and still have some magicka in the tank. But the other 2 glyphs are a spell damage glyph for the extra mag recovery, all infused. For our weapons here, running axes here for more crit damage, charge here, and you make sure you run the magicka enchantment here, so whenever you auto attack you restore 177 magicka. Make sure you are running that. That is super good for sustain, and the charge allows you to apply that very often. We are running Master Dual Wield here, and the reason for that is the twin slashes deal 1635 more damage for each hit, and the initial attack and bleed, so it's very good for overall damage. Other weapon here will be Nirnhone Disease. You should run a poison here, but I don't feel like making poisons on the PTS, so I just run a disease glyph here. For our back bar, it will be Vate Strand Power with a weapon damage enchant. You should either run Escapist Potions here if you're running the portal, and if you're not, you should run more poisons here for more overall damage. And the reason we run Vate Strand once again is for the damage and the insane dot it has. For our armor pieces here, we're running 1 reinforce on our boots, legs, chest, 1 impen on our sash, shoulders, and head, and then 1 piece divines. And they're all prismatic glyphs, by the way. The reason why we run 1 piece divines, by the way, is so we get 1% more crit and healing damage. This is originally 11%, but if you run 1 divines here, you can get that up to 12%. That's just something I like doing. If you want to be a bit more tanky, definitely put Inpen here instead, but I like the extra crit damage. Onto our CP here. CP, we're running Duelist Rebuff, reduces your damage taken by single target attacks by 6%. Thaumaturge, a lot of our damage comes from HOTS, so I do like to run this. Fighting Finesse increases your critical damage and critical healing done by. Our crit percent is relatively high at 32%, and with this ability it goes up to about 40%, so I definitely think it's worth running Fighting Finesse here. Mastered Arms, increase your damage done with direct damage by 6%. This is all your damage, so it's pretty much a must. Onto our red tree here, we have Pain Refuge. We have no way to cleanse the negative effects, so this helps us in survivability. Sustained by Suffering, once again, no way to cleanse the negative effects, so it gives us a free 150 magicka and stamina recovery. Relentless, whenever you get feared, you get major protection for 3 seconds, reducing your damage taken by 10%. This is super strong because when you get snared or feared or stunned, you're basically taking damage for free with no way to dodge it, so getting that extra 10% damage reduction is super good. And then Survival Instincts, this reduces your core combat skills by 25%, which is very strong. For your green CP, I recommend running War Mount, Gifted Rider, Rationer, Liquid Efficiency, and Breakfall. Alright, I'll just showcase how to play the build real quick. So basically, you just want to make sure you have Corrosive Armor on the whole time. Make sure you always have your potion up. I'm going to start out by proccing Elemental here to get the Vate Strand proc into the Masters. And then you just want to stun, off cooldown, Rune Blades, and proc this right away as well. Always make sure this has 100% uptime. Gives you quite a bit more damage. Once again, our mobility skill is Fleet-Footed Gait. You just use this to get around. I will say though, this is quite buggy on some terrain. It doesn't really work sometimes. So definitely I think they need to fix that, but it sometimes is quite buggy. Another nice thing about this is you can actually re-enter it, which makes for some pretty fun interactions in PvP. I do want to comment on one thing though. The reason I do think for this class at the moment, you do need to rely very heavily on proc sets to do damage, and that is just simply because this class lacks a lot of damage, since it doesn't have a blast bone or merciless or anything like that. So if you're not running proc sets, this class does not feel very good at the moment. But if you're running proc sets, the class actually feels very strong in my opinion, because this class has really good survivability and very good sustain passives. So it has everything else covered. It just needs a damage boost in my opinion, and this class will be very strong. But since we don't have any of that, we do end up having to run a lot of proc sets here to get our damage. But with the proc sets, our damage is still super high, which allows us to kill a lot of players very easily. And with that, I do hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you guys have any questions regarding the build, please feel free to ask down in the comments below. I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the build. And with that, I hope you guys did enjoy the video.